There's a part of World War I that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and it has nothing to do with artillery duels or trench raids. It's the cold, a creeping, bone-deep cold that drained strength, blurred judgment, and made daily survival harder than some battles. Soldiers didn't just fight enemies. They fought a climate so wet and brutal it could cripple a man long before a bullet ever reached him. And in the middle of that misery, where wool blankets turned into icy sponges and uniforms froze stiff overnight, soldiers carried a small, unassuming object that quietly outperformed nearly every piece of winter gear the military issued. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a tool. It was a simple pouch something so basic that most people today don't even know it existed. Trench warfare turned Europe into a swampy, frozen maze during winter. Rain flooded dugouts faster than pumps could clear them. Sleet came sideways. Groundwater seeped up until trench floors dissolved into knee-deep mud. Even the air itself felt wet. Nothing stayed dry, especially wool, which the armies relied on for insulation. Wool works beautifully when dry, but trench life made sure it almost never was. Once saturated, wool loses insulation rapidly. It gets heavier, it gets colder. It becomes the exact opposite of what you want pressed against your skin on a freezing night. So when the wool failed, when fires gave away positions, and when every inch of gear felt soaked through, soldiers reached for something else. Their heat pouch. These pouches appeared across French, British, German, Canadian, and Anzac lines. Some were officially issued. Most were handmade from scraps of canvas, denim, or blanket material. Their purpose was simple: hold heat. Inside them, soldiers poured warm sand, heated barley, rice, or small, smooth stones. The design didn't need complexity because it relied on something far more powerful than fabric thermal mass. Blankets trapped the body's existing heat, but these pouches didn't trap warmth. They generated it by holding dense heat and releasing it slowly for hours. They became portable, radiant heaters that worked even when everything around them was wet, cold, and unforgiving. What made the heat pouch superior had nothing to do with military innovation and everything to do with basic physics. Wool loses its value in moisture. A heat pouch doesn't care. Rain, sleet, humidity, freezing mud, none of it stops thermal mass from radiating warmth. The materials soldiers used, whether grain or stone, all have high specific heat capacity. Once heated, they release warmth at a slow, steady rate that can't be matched by wet cloth. And unlike a fire, a heat pouch doesn't produce smoke, sparks, or light. It's warmth without risk, comfort without cost. Soldiers used these pouches everywhere. They tucked them under tunics to warm their core. They shoved them into boots to keep toes from going numb. They slid them beneath bedding, so sleep came a little easier in the frozen trenches. Some men placed them against the lower back or the kidneys for long patrol watches. Others sandwiched them between puttees and boots to maintain circulation. In medical tents, nurses and doctors quietly noted that soldiers who relied on these heat pouches suffered fewer cold-related injuries, fewer numb fingers, fewer frozen feet, fewer trench frostbite cases. For an object so small, its impact was enormous. Back home, women's groups, knitting circles, and families contributed by sewing thousands of pouches. They filled them with barley, rice, or wheat, so the bags were soft, flexible, and better at retaining heat than stones alone. The home front couldn't send soldiers warmth from a fireplace, but they could send these pouches, each one a tiny counterattack against the bitter winters of Europe. Every soldier who received one understood immediately. This wasn't just a comfort item, it was a lifeline. The science behind these pouches is the same science behind modern hot water bottles, sauna stones, and masonry heaters. Dense materials store far more energy than fabric. They warm slowly and cool slowly. In environments where everything is wet and conductive heat loss is constant, a radiant heat source is more valuable than any blanket. WWI soldiers didn't need a lecture in thermodynamics to figure this out. They learned through experience, through suffering, through long, sleepless nights in trenches that froze into walls of iron. Today, the same method still works. Anyone can recreate a trench-style heat pouch with basic materials. A modern version can be made from thick canvas or denim, filled with rice, barley, or sand, and gently heated near a fire or on top of a stove. For wilderness survival without modern gear, heating smooth stones and wrapping them in cloth creates a field-expedient version almost identical to what soldiers used over a century ago. Homesteaders still use grain-filled warmers to heat beds in winter cabins. Cold weather workers keep rice bags in trucks for emergencies. The method survives because it requires nothing: no electricity, no batteries, no dry fabric, just a pouch and something that holds heat. Understanding this little piece of gear gives us a deeper appreciation for the ingenuity of the men who endured the Great War. These weren't soldiers with high-tech gloves or battery-powered jackets. They didn't have polymer insulation or synthetic fabrics. They had canvas, grain, stones, and a will to survive one more night. The heat pouch wasn't made by engineers in a laboratory. It was shaped by necessity, improved by suffering, and perfected by millions of men shivering through endless winters. It delivered warmth when blankets failed, when fires were impossible, and when the world around them turned hostile and frozen. For something so simple, it solved a problem modern gear often struggles with: providing reliable heat in wet, freezing environments. That's why this forgotten trench trick still deserves a place in any modern cold weather toolkit. It's cheap, durable, effective, and requires almost nothing to recharge. If you value forgotten field tricks, wartime ingenuity, and survival methods tested in the harshest conditions imaginable, then this small pouch is a reminder that sometimes the simplest ideas are the ones that save lives. And if you want more forgotten techniques, lost gear, and historical survival wisdom, make sure to subscribe, share this video, and help keep these lessons alive for the next generation of explorers, builders, and historians.